I wanted to start making just a series of videos each month. That's just what all I read this month and what I plan to read next month. Anything like that, just to kind of give recommendations on what I've been liking recently. Just one of those situations, you know. And I feel like I couldn't do that for a while for specific reasons I'll get into. But this past month was a bit of a lighter reading month for me for specific reasons. Again, one that I'll get into. Chief among the reasons was because the new Donkey Kong game came out and I've been addicted. Another reason is because I have been suffering a bit of a book hangover. One of the reasons I couldn't really do the monthly wrap up thing is because for the past several months I've only really been reading one thing in my free time. I have been just plowing through the Wheel of Time series. So I didn't think that would be super interesting if each month it was just another, like, I read more Wheel of Time. Yep, I read more Wheel of Time. It's still pretty cool. Loki, did you want attention? There he is. Hey, bud. Did you want attention? I didn't know how interesting it would be to just talk about Wheel of Time every single month. Um, so I was really focused on trying to get through the series. And unfortunately, because of that, I was suffering a bit of a book hangover where it's like, well, now that I'm done Wheel of Time, I need to just sit with it for a while and let all that digest. But that is where we get into our first book that I read this month, and that was actually New Spring by Robert Jordan. This one, if you don't know about Wheel of Time is this high fantasy 14 novel long series. Each book is anywhere from like 600 to 1,000 pages long. So it took me a while to get through it, just because I really wanted to try to take in all the details, and there's a lot of world building to go into, so it's a better experience if you go through it slow. But there's a lot of it, so it ends up taking a long time. New Spring is a prequel that takes place before the events of Wheel of Time proper. So if you're familiar with Wheel of Time and you somehow have not heard of this book, it basically covers the backstory ish of Moiraine and Lan and how those two met and became bonded. That's the summarization of the plot. It was kind of weird going from the very end of Wheel of Time, which was this huge, climactic, massive event, to just a fun little side story that made it feel a little anticlimactic for me, but that's just a personal issue. The book itself is really nice. It's got a fun mystery involved, well written action. Moiraine and Lan are written very well. Very likable characters. They have a lot of banter back and forth with each other. If you like Wheel of Time, you'll like the prequel. If you're not into Wheel of Time, probably don't start with it. I don't know if it does enough to let you in on what's happening in the world to fully comprehend what's happening in this book. I think that this actually released after the 8th book of Wheel of Time. Not fact checking myself on that. Next up, I had mentioned this book that I was reading through in a previous video, but The Way of Zen by Alan Watts. I like to throw in some nonfiction with my reading, and I thought that this would be a fun look into Zen Buddhism, just out of curiosity. It wasn't quite what I was expecting going into it, and that's probably more on me. It was more of a look at the history of Zen Buddhism and the development of the religion itself and the practices and the philosophy and how that developed throughout history. And it was less about the actual practices and beliefs, rituals, the spiritual aspects, and the actual thinking of the philosophy themselves, which was kind of what I wanted a bit more of. It does touch on that, but not as much as I really wanted from it personally. Then I read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That one was on my Kindle. Don't have a physical with me. Sorry. Um, what is there to say about Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy that hasn't already been said? You know, it's a fun book. If you like fun, if you like comedy, especially if you like the British style of humor that's like very dry, kind of like almost observational type humor that just pokes fun at things. Ooh, it's a good time. If you haven't read it and you like comedy, definitely give it a go. That one I actually read this past month for the book club that I'm in. I have read it before. This is my second time reading through it. We had a lot of fun discussions about it. Mostly it was just talking about our favorite parts that made us laugh. But one of the questions that was asked was, is anything taken seriously in this book? And ultimately we were like, nah, I don't think anything is really taken seriously. This book, everything is just kind of poked at, prodded, made fun of to some degree. So if you just want something lighthearted to laugh at and you haven't read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy yet, give that a go. It's just a really fun, whimsical sci-fi adventure. And the last one I read was Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales. This is actually the third book in the Emily Wilde's series. The first one is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. This was a really interesting series. I don't believe this is the last one. They're probably going to be making more by Heather Fawcett. Yep. Had to double check myself on that one. It's a series that has a lot of whimsy to it. The basic premise is that it takes place in basically a version of our world. Just imagine real life, but fairies are real. Like, it is just a known thing that fairies exist, and all the different types of fairies that exist, you know, like dryads, brownies, any type of fey creature, bogarts, anything like that, they're real, they exist. And there is a field of study that develops entirely around the study of fairies called dryadology. And the book follows Emily Wilde, who is a dryadologist. She goes on an expedition to do some field research for a thesis paper that she's working on. The thing that's really fun about this book is that it really takes this fantastical, whimsical concept of fairies being real and all these fairy tales having been actual events, and takes that in such a real way that feels like, yes, these are things that happened and we study them as a science to understand the Fae, what they're all about, classification of their species, studying their political hierarchy. It's just really fascinating it feels real. It feels like a real field of study that is happening in this world, which is really fascinating to me. It's also written in like a diary format, where each chapter is like, February 1st, today I did this, kind of thing. And I've always liked that. I just enjoy that type of writing. I don't know what it is. Like, I read Bram Stoker's Dracula every October for Halloween because I just love the book. And I also think that just, as someone who journals a lot, I think that just kind of resonates with me on some level there. I'm not sure what's going on there, but it's just a style of writing that I enjoy. So those are the books I read this particular month. Moving on to the TBR for next month. If you are curious about what I got going down the pipeline there, might make individual videos on these as we go. Just depends on what jumps out at me. The first one we got going is the book for the book club this month, and that is Legends and Lattes. This is one I have already read, but we are reading it for the book club per my recommendation because I love this book. To give you a quick summary of it, it is about an orc who retires from adventuring to open a cafe in a town where no one has ever heard of coffee. That's the plot. It is a cozy fantasy novel. It's just delightful. You gotta read it. I'm very excited to give it another read through. I'll have more thoughts on it once it's more fresh in my brain, because this came out in 2023, 2022, a few years back. I read it when it initially came out, so details are a little fuzzy right now, but I'm very excited to give this one another read. Now comes the fun part where I just go over to my TBR list over here. This whole section is just TBR. So I'm gonna take a stroll over there and I'm gonna pick out some books that I'm excited to read this month. Here we go. All right, it's probably not all I'm going to read this month. These are the ones I'm just most excited for. The first one, oh, I got so excited about this one. I'm Afraid You've Got Dragons by Peter S. Beagle. If you don't recognize that name, that is the author of The Last Unicorn. And if you haven't read The Last Unicorn, read The Last Unicorn. What are you doing? Very excited for this. The Last Unicorn is such a good book. It reads like a modern fairy tale. So I don't. I like to sometimes just get a book that I know nothing about. I just know the author, and I'm like, I like that author. I've read some of their stuff before. Don't give me a plot synopsis. Give me the book. That's the situation here. I saw the Superman movie because I love Superman, so I picked up Superman and Philosophy. Why not? Learn a bit about philosophy and how the Man of Steel himself can be thought of in a philosophical sense. I think that'll be a fun little read. I like superheroes. I like philosophy talk. Should be a fun one. And the one I'm most excited for, Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab. V.E. Schwab is one of my favorite authors. I have just about every one of her books lined up over here. Darker Shade of Magic, Vengeance, Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. If you haven't read anything by V.E. Schwab, highly recommend picking up some of her books. Absolutely love her style of writing. She has a way of just starting a chapter with a sentence that just invites you to read more. It's like she'll just write something and it'll make you go, tell me more about that. Like the Darker Shade of Magic series, the first sentence was, I believe, Kel wore a very peculiar coat. And I don't know about you, but my brain hears that and is like, tell me more about that. Tell me more about that peculiar coat. That sounds interesting. Please tell me more about this coat. And she's very talented in wanting you to keep reading. And the stories are always just a really fun time. So those are the primary books that I plan on reading this coming month. Hopefully I'll find the time to end up doing more. I want to know in the comments, what have you been reading recently? What are your thoughts on what you've been reading recently? Any recommendations that you have to give? Get that conversation going in the comments. I'm always down for book recommendations. Granted, the TBR list is large because while I was reading Wheel of Time, books just kept piling up. Whoops. But hey, thank you so much for watching this. I will try to do this consistently each month of just a regular update of some books I've been reading and recommendations and giving some thoughts. Hope you enjoyed watching. See you again next time.